Indo-European mythology connects like a web, an intricate web with some of the strands broken. But what we're attempting to do in this organization is reconnect those strands. But this is somewhat difficult because most mythological tales have been lost to antiquity, and those that have survived now only have relevance as quaint little stories. But myth is so much more than stories, more than fiction. It's the voice of the soul spoken through symbols. Reason for modernity's dismissal of mythology is because it's a threat to religion. Because here in the West, religion is mythology taken literally. While others want to cancel the past because it was ugly and brutal, and that hurts their feelings. Those who believe this need to realize you can never wipe that slate clean. You can't deny where you come from. It's like trying to deny the existence of your parents. Their genes are within you, and there's nothing you can do to erase that fact. You can attempt to intellectualize your way out of it, but you can't. We are who we are because of the past. So this is why I think it's imperative to be a necromancer of the gods. The gods, those primordial aspects of being, psychic images that cannot be fully rationalized. They are entities that organize the contents of the unconscious, connecting it at its deepest levels with all. Archetypes are expressing themselves through these gods, monsters, angels, and demons that are universal within our species, but wear different masks depending on nation or culture. They are symbols we can never fully understand, images that reveal themselves as representatives of the outside world, but are also used by the psyche to express the inner world. Finding meaning in these symbols beyond what we already understand them to be is the idea of symbolic thought. This process opens portals to the archetypes as well as a vehicle to navigate the deeper reaches of the unconscious. Symbolic work with an image is the process of understanding its subjective meaning. One must discover what lies beneath the surface to see those patterns that resonate with the self. But because of fear and personal prejudices, the archetypes are often viewed from a narrow perspective. Thus, most have no problem with the positive archetypes such as the mother, the hero, the sage, but are terrified by the darker ones. Which god to utilize, though, will vary from person to person. We, in the sect of the Horn God, are obviously drawn toward those that dwell in the shadows. Now, most satanic organizations utilize Satan. The sect is not strictly satanic, so we acknowledge Pan, Cernunnos, Prometheus, Dionysus, Shiva, Kali, Iblis, Odin, Lilith. The choice is the individuals. Who speaks to you? Which of these entities understands the language of your personal soul? That's the question. Carl Jung believed we needed these symbols, these gods, to express that which could not fully be known, conveying ideas beyond what the written or spoken word can articulate. For many thousands of years, the gods were everywhere and in everything. From the time of the primordial communal fires to the temples of the gods of Abraham, the gods nourished the psyche. And Abrahamism, that preeminent religious philosophy in the West, with all its misuses and abuses, brought nourishment to those overwhelmed with the psychic chaos of being. But beginning with the Enlightenment, and later with Darwin and many other great intellectuals of the 19th century, the Christian influence over Western civilization began to decline. Now, some of you might be saying, what the fuck are you talking about? There are still plenty of Christians around. True, it's still the dominant religion here in the West, but compared to what it once was, in its greater influence over governments, culture, and daily life, it doesn't compare. For example, Europe in the Middle Ages was under what can only be described as Christian Sharia law. Things in the 19th century, though, rapidly changed. And this deicide slaughter brought on by rationalism became so great it even caught the attention of Nietzsche, who declared God is dead. Even though he personally had no use for the Abrahamic God, Nietzsche saw Yahweh's death as deleterious to the basic foundation of Western thought. Many of you, though, might be saying the metaphorical death of God is a good thing. But take a minute and think about it. This crumbling of the Abrahamic system filled people with despair and existential dread. Look at it this way. You personally might not need antidepressants to get through the day, but there are many who do, and if you were to remove them, ban them, then that would wreak havoc. A lack of religion for many people leads to pessimism, a will toward nothingness that's antithetical to a life-affirming philosophy. Understand that a lot of people get a sense of meaning from religious thought. It helps them to find their place in reality, and when that rug is pulled out from under them, well, where do they go to find meaning in a world that has murdered God? Many, though, turn to politics with a religious-like fervor, while others find their gods in technology, entertainment, and even the sciences. This, though, is like seeking nourishment from junk food. It might fill you up, but it's not going to help in the long run. For us, though, we on the left-hand path, resurrecting the gods is the answer, but you have to be careful when performing this act of necromancy, because those longing for a shepherd will find no solace on the path. This is because the gods of the left-hand path are not here to hold your hand, but to smack you in the face until you awaken to a reality most would rather ignore. They aren't gods of forgiveness and mercy, but dark entities. They are reminders that the strength to suffer the tribulations of existence should come not from the whims of the collective, but from your own personal will. The reanimation of the ancient gods is what we in the sect of the Horn God are attempting to do. Thus, we begin with the most primal archetype of the dark gods, the Horn God, which should be obvious. Besides being the personification of the human as beast, the Horn God is the god of the forest. But what does that mean? What does the forest represent? The forest is a metaphor for the subconscious, so as you dare to search for the Horn God, you're going within instead of out. This is the antithesis of the right-hand path notion of going outside yourself for answers. In the Slavic myths, this is represented by the clash between Veles, the god of the forest, and Perun, the sky father, a sky father in the vein of Zeus or Jupiter. For thousands of years, this idea of a division between forest and sky has been utilized as a means of control. Fear the woods, for we don't know what may linger in the shadows. Instead, find your peace under the bright sun and the wide blue sky. This continues to this day amongst the Abrahamists. God is up, right? The horn god is down. He's no longer in the force, though. He's been relegated to somewhere deeper, to hell. What does this symbolize? In the forest, he can be reached and obtained. In hell, though, he's out of range, and he can only be reached after it's too late. Now, this idea has been embedded in the very foundation of Western civilization. Some may be screaming, though, Satan and the horn god are not the same thing. And you're right on a fundamental level, but that original Satan, that being in the Old Testament, is not the same guy who came later in the New Testament. Old Testament Satan worked for Yahweh. He wasn't his enemy. Just as the Old Testament God is not the same as the New, for in the Old Book, Yahweh's a prick. He's jealous and petty and will kill his children for any lame-ass excuse. In the New Testament, he is, in the Zoroastrian tradition, divided in two, Christ and Satan. And in Dark Age Europe, Satan was adorned in the costume of the horn god, also adopting some of his attributes. What we do, though, is go deep into the primal self earlier than any Christian influence to find that wrathful, savage god, the horn god. Because that's where the purity is. The purity is in what the primal god represents. But overall, even though the formation of symbols is essential within the human psyche, most pay little attention to their ability to bring substantial meaning to their existence. When we're aware of our dreams, though, and our nightmares, when we pay attention to life's surreal twists and turns, a deep awareness comes about. And we on this path want to go deeper still, and it's done by partaking in meditation and dark rituals, which will then open the portal into the abyss, into hell, in order to release and bring forth the horn god. In conclusion, this video has been an attempt to summarize why we're called the sect of the horn god, not the sect of Satan, Lucifer, or whatever. We're attempting to go back further than the Abrahamic influences into those dark entities that have been pushed down and shunned by modernity. We endeavor to rationalize the irrational, to put flesh on the symbolic, and to partake in the ecstasies of those primal, sinister divinities. Can it be done? Watch us.